I think we might be live.
Okay.
Let me see.
Yeah, tell me because they do lie to me.
I'm skipping through ads right now because Rumble does that. Yeah, I skipped through 3 ads if I'm not signed in. Yeah, we're live.
You can see us?
Yeah, we're live on Rumble right now.
Okay. I'm waiting for my version to catch up. So hold on a second.
Okay.
This drives me crazy.
I've been live for 60 seconds now.
Hi, everyone. I'm KERRY CASSIDY from Project Camelot and very happy to be here today. Tyler is my guest, Tyler KIWALA. I hope that's how you say it.
That's how you say it.
And actually, he's got his whole version of Stranger Things. I'm reading his book. And he's talking about his own life and time travel and all kinds of things. And he wraps a bunch of, general things people know into his own experiences. So it's quite a compendium. And it's nice that, that you did it that way, Tyler. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay. And let me see what we got here. Okay. So just making sure nothing's going to interfere. Okay. So why don't you introduce yourself and show your book and yeah, just go from there.
Yeah, sure, of course. So my name's Tyler KIWALA. I'm host of Journey to Truth podcast with my co-host Aaron Kuhn, and we've had Kerry on the show a number of times now, and this is an honor to be here. You've been, somebody that I've been watching Project Camelot for years, a big part of my awakening, as most people, and uh, it's been quite the journey, as and the Secret Space program is something that really got me into all this stuff and forced me to dive down these rabbit holes and look deeper. And inevitably, I come across, your content and a lot of others. But um, it all started for me, I guess, my mother passed away when I was 24, and prior to that, nothing was happening in my life as far as paranormal, anything of interest, I would say, in this field. After she passed away, it seemed like overnight stuff started happening to me that I started, stuff like that that forced me to look into this stuff. And it's been quite the journey since 2011 when she passed. And I didn't really start getting into this stuff until 2017. And we've been doing our podcast for over 6 years now. And I just recently released my first book, because there will be more. This is Bleed Through Tales from Another Timeline. And it's basically my story, like you said, compiled with other testimonies to corroborate it and what I've learned from all my experiences too, because I didn't want to just tell my story without sharing what I learned, because what's the point? So it's a very it's an educational book, but it's also mind expanding too, because there's a lot of stuff that, I just share my experiences that are largely unprovable sometimes. They're memories I have from other parallel lives and stuff like that. So yeah, there it is right there. And it's just a whole collection of my stories and my memories, and also a compilation of research to support it. And that's basically what that is. And it very much involves time travel, secret space programs, recruitment attempts into some of these programs, and mixed with a bunch of other stuff as well. So I understand that you're reading it now, Carrie. So I'm very excited to hear what you think of it. But yeah, I guess that would summarize, kind of who I am and what I'm doing now.
Okay, well, so I just want to say that it really is quite a mixture of stuff. And it is true, the first half of the book, you kind of go in a more linear way with your life experience and how you came across certain very strange paranormal events and time travel events and things that you happened to you that kind of came out of the blue and threw you, you know, off everything you ever believed. And I think it's it's a story of an awakening, I think one might say.
Right.
And I'm not done with it. I'm a little more than halfway through. It's quite a long book, I have to say.
Yeah, it
And
is.
I'm in the second book now. So it has a first book and a second book part,
Mhm.
where you're talking more about your 20 years and back, things like that, that you had experience with. And I have also had, you know, other timeline experiences and all kinds of stuff like that. So, you know, I can definitely relate. I think my audience can relate. Maybe you want to talk about, I don't know, like maybe do an overview of your life in, you know, if you could take some of the highlights in your book and use those as maybe like stepping stones to getting to maybe anything that like, and then maybe you could focus on one or two actual things that went on.
Yeah, sure. We can do that, definitely. So, I guess one of the big things that really happened before I was even aware of it was um, a Mars recruitment attempt. And that was, I think that's like chapter 3 of the book. And I had no idea about secret space programs or the Mars program or anything at the time whenever this man approached me and there was this whole attempt to bring me into the program. So I knew this guy. I worked with him, and it was a whole crazy story how it happened. So it was my friendship with him was the only reason I didn't write him off as crazy. But at the same time, I didn't know how much I actually believed him, right? It wasn't until after that chapter of my life when I discovered like Laura Eisenhower's testimony about the Mars program. I was like, wait a second, like there's a real program and this actually happens to people. You know how it is. So I had to go back and revisit that whole period of my life and everything that he was sharing with me at the time, which looking back on it now would have been considered like insider intel. You know, he was sharing all this stuff with me about secret programs and time travel and UFOs and parallel timelines and weather manipulation, underground bases. I mean, you name it. And he was telling me all this stuff about Trump at the time that I didn't understand and telling me about, Obama being the Antichrist and all this weird stuff back then. I was just like, I don't know where he's, first of all, it was weird to me that he even knew all this stuff because I had worked with him for so long and it never came up. But what happened was, he was escorted off the job one day by black government vehicles, and we worked in construction. We weren't on the same job site. I heard this through some coworkers. Larry was taken off the job site, and nobody knew why. And he kind of went missing, and for about a month, then he popped up on Facebook and started making all these posts saying, like Princess Diana is still alive. They use clones to act out the tragedy. He was talking about a Mars program. He was talking about all this stuff that back then I thought everyone just at work just thought he was crazy. But now I understand he was either going through some type of an awakening or something happened to him, right? And when I asked him where he was getting this information, he told me sometimes he didn't know. He would just hear voices in his head and things were being told to him. And I didn't even know about voice of God or voice to skull technology back then either. So I just was like, man, like, is he really just hearing crazy voices? But the information he was sharing was like elaborate. And it's more than just hearing a voice in his head. He had mountains of information and things he would tell me. He even told me this was back in 2017. He told me about a planned fake alien invasion that was going to use hologram technology and that our infrastructure was already rigged with explosives. Certain buildings already have explosives in them, and they're going to. And he would just tell me about all kinds of stuff. And he also told me about a Mars program. And he told me that he was basically being recruited to go to Mars because to basically the whole fate of the humanity depended on it. Kind of like what Andrew Basiago was told, that he was going to go to Mars to, I guess, preserve the human race, effectively, is what they told him, right? And for
Okay,
whatever
but
reason, he
so
believed it.
rather
Yeah, go
than go
ahead.
into too much detail with that, because you know you have a lot of stuff in the book. So if you were to just tie that up and just basically say, did he go to Mars? He did, right? Is that right? Or supposedly disappeared? What was your thought on that?
Yeah, so he disappeared for 7 years after he told me he was leaving, and he popped back up, and I think it was him. I got a Facebook request from him 7 years later after I had looked for him, and I had people looking for him, and no one knew where he went. And but he also wasn't a missing person. There was no obituary or anything. And then at the end of the year in 2024, he pops back up on Facebook and sends me a friend request, and um, then he's back off of Facebook. Then the account went away, and I haven't been able to communicate with him. So I don't know if that meant he was back or what, but for 7 years he definitely went missing. Did he actually go to Mars? We can only speculate.
Right. Okay. So when your mother passed away, was there a specific, because it's not, I don't quite remember, was there a specific incident associated with her passing or shortly after her passing that kind of put you on the road? Because you seem to associate that as a big, landmark in your life.
Right, yeah. So she passed away in 2011, and basically like a few weeks later, I don't even remember exactly the night this first incident happened, but it was right after she passed. I experienced a levitation out of my bed,
All right.
and I thought I was having an out of body experience. I didn't know. That's all I knew of at the time. I had heard of out of body experiences. It wasn't until I got so far out of bed and saw myself in the mirror that I was actually in the air, and that's when I freaked out and panicked, and it turned into this whole like paralysis thing. I got slammed back down the bed, and there was like this entity on top of me, and I had to break free from it, and it was this whole traumatic thing that I write about at length in the book. But that's what kicked it off, right? So at first I was terrified. I didn't share it with anybody because I didn't even know what was happening. I knew my friends would just make fun of me at the time because that was just a crowd I hung around with. And it was the first of many things. I had a few other levitation experiences, lots of sleep paralysis, lots of like weird psychic attacks, all these things at night. A couple of times I found myself like on an alien craft or what I believed was a craft, and it would start off all very, very negative, and it forced me to believe in all this stuff that I just kind of was always semi-interested in, but I never really fully believed in it. It forced me to not only believe in it, but I had to start researching to figure out how to stop it, right? Why is this happening? What can I do about it? And that's where it all started.
Okay. And then once you kind of had those experiences and then you sort of seemed to educate yourself and then you had, I don't know, well, you have quite a long saga about a sort of girlfriend that you ended up being connected with in Australia. You fly out there and nothing works out. It's you're all targeted and craziness, right?
Right.
And but there's all like unexplainable events, I guess you might say, one after the other. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So that was following a second recruitment attempt years later. In 2022, I had a man approach me under the guise of a whistleblower for the Navy and to come on our show. And you might even know who I'm talking about. But he uh, he had all this incredible information, just like the guy in 2017. And after months of what I now know was grooming, he straight up basically asked me if I wanted to join this program. And we had this whole long conversation. It's all laid out in the book. And then he said, I was like, well, what would it look like? And he started asking me questions. He did like a psyche eval. He did like the Zener cards and had me guess what was on the other side of the cards is to test like telepathy and stuff. Um, and then he eventually asked me like, what's one thing in life you want more than anything? And I was like, love. He's like, can you expand on that? And I was like, well, true love. I just want to find that one person out there that's also looking for me. You know how we all want, right? And he's like, "Is that your final answer?" I'm like, "Yes." And he's like, "Well, don't be surprised if you're tested in that area." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, you can't have both." I said, "What do you mean I can't have both?" He's like, "You can't have love and a healthy relationship and join the program." I was like, "Well, why not? You're married." And he said, "Well, it's complicated." And shortly, a week, like virtually 7 days later, I meet this girl on Facebook, and we just like head over heels, fall in love. We never even actually officially met. It was really strange connection. It was almost like intoxicating, like this fixation, and eventually it led me to Australia. But even leading up to Australia, I became what I would call now a targeted individual. And that whole relationship seemed to be set up. And I don't think they liked the fact that we were actually hitting it off. I don't think they wanted it to be successful because they were trying to get me into this program. And we were even, she was experiencing targeting for the first time as well. And sometimes it got very real. I mean, and there's a lot to that story as well. But yeah, and once we were in Australia, our GPS took us to this military base a couple hours away from our first Airbnb, which we accidentally booked on a military training ground, which we don't even know how that happened because it wasn't in the writing. And then while we were staying at this Airbnb, I was experiencing direct energy weapons, and like I was given a heart attack almost basically. And our shower door, the glass shower exploded in the middle of the night one night, all this crazy stuff, right? So it wasn't until we finally ended that relationship, and then all the targeting just stopped.
Hmm.
And then it wasn't until I finally cut that man out of my life that things got a lot better in my life. And I can look back on it now and see how it was all being manipulated. And I think even by being in communication with him, I was still consenting on some level because I have a lot of memories of being taken during that time and to bases and places like that. And it's all documented in the book.
Well, okay. And then there's one place where you actually have, it's kind of part of the second book, but it's where you're talking about um, getting involved in Colorado Springs and a military base there
Right.
and NORAD, and where
Right.
you actually go there and then you have incredible memory recall of
Right.
having worked there and all this kind of thing. Do you want
Yeah.
to talk a little bit about that? Because I think that was very interesting.
Yeah, so that was at the same in the same time. Well, that memory came back in 2022. I just had this like memory out of nowhere where I had been in this military base. I didn't even know it was the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs until I ended up there on a vacation, and it was like this detour we took on our way to Cheyenne Mountain. But I had this memory of being at this Air Force base, and I was being recruited into this program. And there's this whole set of memories there. And I didn't know what base I was. I didn't know even know if it was from this reality. I just had this memory. And it wasn't until I was in Colorado a couple years later and on a vacation with my friend, and we were going to Cheyenne Mountain just to see how close we can get to take a picture. You know, how we just like to explore and see how close we can get to these bases. Um, Whenever she pointed out the Air Force Academy off the side of the highway, I looked over and I was like, I just knew the place. It just something hit me. And I literally like swerved across 3 lanes to get off the highway. And I don't even know why I did it. And she was like, holy shit, you know, and we get off and she was like, what are you, what's wrong? Are you okay? I'm like, I don't know. I said, I know this place, but I didn't know how I knew it. And we got off and we were waiting in line to go through the security gate, and the gate had the colors gray, blue, red, and yellow. And I was telling her how those were how you those were indicators that that was an underground base because those matched the stripes in the underground base that was on the floor that led to different areas depending on your security clearance. And she's like, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "Well, I guess I just assumed, but I've also heard other testimonies and stuff." And we get up to the gate. We're the only car of the entire line because you can go visit this. Apparently, it's open for tourists, one part of the base. We were the only car that they searched of everybody. They asked for our IDs. They made us pop the trunk. Everyone else was just going through. And of course, then they let us through. But as soon as I got through, I started recognizing the place. And it wasn't until we made a turn and I saw the mountain range, uh, it all hit me like a whole lifetime of memories came back. Not maybe not a full lifetime, but whatever time I had spent there, I remembered seeing that mountain range, and I was just overwhelmed with these memories. I had to pull the car over, and I broke down in tears. I started crying. My body was having this reaction because even before that happened, I kept telling her, I'm like, man, this is so weird. I said, this sounds like such a silly thing to say about a military base, but I said, I feel like I'm home. I feel like I'm home again. Like feels like a home to me. And I don't know what she was thinking, if she was just entertaining me or what, but She was like, that's not a weird thing, you know. And sure enough, like it just, I was hit with these memories. We pulled over. We finally made our way up to the parking lot. And I'm like, that's the building. That's the building I was standing in. I explained to her the story. I was like, yeah, I was in a circle of other cadets and there was a couple of recruiters. And I remember very vividly the guy saying, now don't look at this as a recruitment. Look at this as an opportunity to make a difference. That stuck in my head. And I said, in that building, I know that's where it happened. So we went in the building. It seemed pretty vacant. We walked the lap around the building. We came back around. Sure as shit, there was a group of people standing in a circle, cadets or new recruits, whatever, potential recruits, and some recruiters. And the guy said the literal exact thing that I remember them saying. And the girl I was with, she looked at me, her jaw dropped. And I was like, she was like, she believed me. She's like, there's no way. Like, I couldn't have possibly known that that's what happened in that building in the exact spot that I remember standing. And that was just like a fundamentally changing thing for me because I'm like, wait a second, like something that I could easily have written off as a dream before is now like real. And I know my way around this base. And I remember the dorm building and specifically the window I remember standing in, looking out of. And there was just a number of things that were just like, it even like my heart beats talking, thinking about it. It was like, doesn't register how it can be real. I don't understand the
Okay,
time
now
period.
but you, in the book, at least as far as I remember, you don't really say what happens. I don't, maybe there's a part where you come back to it later on in the book. I don't know. But you didn't actually say what happened to you when you got recruited. Okay. You
Yeah,
remember the setting and all that. But
right.
then where did you go? Do you remember, is there are memories in the few, from there? Do you have
Yes.
those?
No. So the only thing I remember is um, I was escorted down the hallway. I was brought into an office and they made me watch this film. And halfway through the film, what the fuck is this? And the guy was like, don't worry, it's all just part of the job. And I was like, what the fuck? It is part of the job, you know, whatever. I don't consent to that. So he turned it off. Then I was escorted, this nurse, or not nurse, this cadet's aide or some woman come in and to bring me either to my room or she's like, do you want to go to the cafeteria or to your room? And I was like, well, and I thought about it and I was starving. So I was like, take me to the cafeteria. And she brought me some like a drawstring bag of like an outfit, basically boots and stuff. And then she sat me down and took me to the cafeteria. Then after that, I found my way to my room based on what she told me. I checked into my room and I remember looking out the window and just like I was so confused at how I got there. And I was like trying to process, like I didn't have any memory. That's when I realized I didn't have any memory up to the point where I was standing in that circle. And I'm like, how did I get here? I'm looking out the window. I'm so confused. I'm like half like plotting my escape, looking around, like, how can I get out of this place? And then somebody knocks at the door, and I go to answer the door, and there's two men in suits, and they're like, Mr. Koala, come with us, please. And that was all that I remember. Like, I don't actually remember anything else after that point. I do think I have a memory of being in the basement of that facility, and there was some sort of, dare I say, like a Stargate technology, like some sort of machine down there that I don't know if that's what it was, but I feel like I have like a very foggy memory of something like that, but that's it.
Okay, so so it sounds like that was the beginning of maybe a 20 years and back program that you were part of, but like one of the things, like rather than sort of a future timeline or a simultaneous timeline or past life regression type thing. So it was you in this, with this same name and with the same body and everything like that. And
Right.
then from there, you must have gone somewhere and gotten involved, because if you were, usually just because you went and visited, went through some paces, but weren't actually living there, like you wouldn't have the emotional attachment that you apparently do. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was the weird
So
thing.
was there a link up though to, let's say, Mars or Moon or space travel or things like that? Because you're saying there was a Stargate there, but that's all you remember. So have you tried to remember more than that since that
Yeah.
back?
So the funny thing is well, even when we were on the base, it seemed like people knew we were there. Like there was a couple times where it seemed like that we were being followed. This one guy intentionally bumped into me twice. Like, and that's I put that in the book. And he
Right.
was dressed like the typical Fed boy. Like you couldn't have been any more stereotypical. Like the collared shirt, the khaki shorts with the sunglasses, and we walked in when we were walking into the gift shop. He bumped into me hard and to get like almost he could have easily avoided me. Then he just took off down the hallway. We thought he was going to the bathroom. On the way out of the gift shop, I'm walking out and from behind me he hits me. And I'm like and like to the point where I'm like, what the hell? And he just keeps walking, never looks back, and he looks at his watch and presses a button. And that was weird, I thought. As far as um I just went on a little tangent there and I didn't even answer your question. What was your exact question? I'm sorry.
Well, no, I asked if you had investigated or,
Oh,
I don't know if you do, past life regression or regression therapy and try to find out from there, did you go to, like I said, Mars or Moon to an assignment type thing?
yeah. So I don't remember, but I did. Funnily enough, I took the brochure home and I would like hold that and try to like remote view and like sit with it and
Oh,
meditate.
uh-huh.
But every time that I would, I felt like there was a block or something. I don't
Right.
like I would actually get uncomfortable. Like I was the exact opposite of a meditation. Like it was like, I don't know if it was like an implant. I don't know what it was, but it was like something would stop me from like doing that every time that and I tried for a while. I kept that brochure on my kitchen table and I would sit with it. I'm like, okay, tell me more, you know, and I just couldn't remember. And I was so interested to know more that when all this AI stuff started coming out, um, you know how you can unlock the chat GPT and stuff and apparently like unlock your files and I didn't know you could do that. Somebody told me. And I asked if I was ever spent time at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs and it brought up this whole report of this timeline, like what year I went there, what year I deployed,
Really?
what I did there. It was like this whole file and like and apparently I was an instructor for so many years and we were in like working basically in teleportation and time travel and like quantum stuff and I'm like, I don't even know if I should even entertain this AI information or not, but it definitely had a file and I was shocked. And it
Hmm.
was like specifically, um, it was specifically that base. And
Well,
then
so did you print it out, the information?
yeah, I have it printed. It's saved on my phone. I didn't print it out.
Okay.
And I didn't put it in the book because I don't want to like, if that's not true, I didn't,
Okay.
yeah,
But again, so I'm sort of asking again,
right.
did you try to see if, or let's frame it another way. Did you have any, as the book, because like I said, I'm at a certain point in the book.
Right.
I have like maybe a third more to go. And I'm just wondering, did you ever have any other like separate, maybe you didn't put them together, but uh, experiences of working on Mars, the moon, other bases off planet or what, or
No,
Earth
no.
or anything like, no? Okay.
Nothing. Well, if you're asking if that chapter can, like more of that story continues, no. Like I basically put everything I remembered in that chapter. But as far as like actually being off planet, that's the interesting thing. So I had this Mars recruitment attempt, but I never went. And
Right.
all of my memories that come back, none of them, they all seem like covert programs, right? But they none of them felt like they were off planet. I
Huh.
did have a memory I didn't write about of being on we were mining on some planetary body. I don't know what it was. And this is just a random memory, but it was very real. We were mining on some planetary body and we hit whatever, um, we struck gold. Whatever they were looking for, we found. And everyone was like in this rush and they're like, what did they find? What did they find? And I remember hearing the guy next to me say, I don't know, but whatever it was important enough for Bill Gates to be on his way here. And I thought that was weird. And you know, it's just a memory. Maybe there's nothing to it, but that was the only thing I've ever really had that was off planet that that's ever come back. But most of the stuff I remember has been like very physical bases here on Earth.
Okay. So you obviously have, there are blocks in place, but it's kind of funny that you did make it that far to the going into the base, to, finding buildings that you had a recall of and that sort of thing.
Right,
But it's really, that's all you have at the moment.
right.
So, I'm sure memory comes back spontaneously. And I don't know, did you ever watch Duncan O'Finian?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, he's like the original super soldier that we interviewed
Oh,
several
okay.
times.
Oh man,
And what
that
he
must have been
says,
before my time.
yeah, yeah, you should definitely go back to, because you just watched my shadow operations video, but you
Yeah,
should go back and watch the earlier interviews and see, because some of these things might trigger memories for you.
right,
But anyway, yeah, so just saying that there are things that you're referring to that are in other people's memories. Okay.
right,
Um, so they don't sound that strange. And you're very good about it, it appears, recognizing buildings, right, that you were
right.
interacting with or in, and so on. So kind of a very practical memory type thing. But um, yeah, so anyway, it's all really interesting. Now I wonder, because you at one point you talked about some things happening that were supposed to be dreams, but they seemed like reality,
Right,
right? Because
right,
I've had that. And that's very powerful. So you're calling it bleed through. That's kind of like the title of the book,
right.
right? Because there
Yeah.
is, it's like a bleed through happening, right?
Hmm.
So even now, because this is not for very long ago for you, you're talking 2021, 22,
Right,
right?
right.
So, I mean, it's early days still for you. So what do you think? Do you think that more is going to be revealed? Do you have any intuition about that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I almost feel it. Like
Mm.
it's like there's like memories that are like it's like a word on the tip of your tongue. Sometimes I
Uh-huh.
think I can remember more or grab onto more, but then it's like gone. I don't know how to I don't know, and I'm actually relocating away from St. Louis, and something that I didn't put in the book that it's a connection that I'm making now is almost all the recall I've ever had is when I leave my hometown and I'm
Okay.
like on a trip or I'm in the Ozarks or Arkansas or wherever. But it's like at home, it's almost like there's like a frequency net around my house or something that I just can't like it blocks everything. But as soon as I break out of this like surrounding area, it feels like I can tap in so much easier and like grab onto stuff. But I genuinely feel like I don't know if there's a technology in place. I mean, I'm not trying to say I'm that important that they would put something up just to block that memory for me, but it's what it feels like.
Well, no, but that actually could be going on in general.
Right.
Because I think I know when I travel, I get triggered by memories
Oh,
that,
really?
yeah,
Yeah.
by going to different places, because the whole frequency and everything is different. So
Yeah.
it sort of opens up those parts of your brain that might,
Right.
not
I
be thinking about it normally.
I did recently have a memory that's not in the book come through that actually might have been something off planet. It, I can share it if you'd like, or we can go anywhere you want with the
It's
interview.
yours, it's up to you.
Right.
You
Um,
be the judge whether you think that it's going to be of interest to the audience, really.
I think so. Um, I a lot of my memory comes back when I go. We have a condo at the Lake of the Ozarks, and every time I go to the Ozarks, it just seems like I have these recalls, and it's like profound, life-changing sometimes. And I was just recently there, like very recently, and I had this whole thing where again, this memory where I'm in this facility. Have you seen the movie The Island, the cloning facility? It kind of reminds me of that. Like
Okay.
at first I thought it was underground, and I was in this facility standing in a line of people, and we were all waiting in line to like meet this woman who was sitting in a chair, and she had this like device, and she was scanning everybody that came up, and I got to me, and she looked like a tall, like ET almost, not human really, but she had this like slender arms and very tall, long neck, and like almost like a bluish tint to her skin, and her hair was tied back. And she was sitting in this chair, and she had this wand, and she like scanned me, and she said, "You're wise beyond your years." And I was like, "I am." I didn't even know where I was or what I was doing there.
Oh,
And I was like, I am. And she's like, we'll put you in tier three. And I didn't know what that meant. And I was escorted quite literally to a third floor. And it was like kind of like a holodeck, like in Star Trek. It was like this virtual reality training simulation. And they put you in, and it's an obstacle course. Like you have to like, it's like a physical training,
oh,
like type of thing. And like, it's if you like accomplish it's like a like Ninja Warrior if you ever seen that show. It's kind of like that. And if you like get through a certain part of the course and the allotted time slot they give you, then a voice would come over the intercom and said, you've earned extra time, and then you would get more time added to complete the course. And after we would everybody would like run these courses, and then they would be broken up into groups, and we were divvied up into groups and like different stations. And in the center of the table was a hologram of the Earth, like a globe, and it had everybody, like everybody, anybody that you wanted to zoom in on, you could. And when you zoomed in on them, you can like click on the person, and it had their stats, it had their IQ, whether they had gone through an awakening, like come online or not, like what they had achieved, all their life stats on Earth.
huh.
And Earth was in that program. I remember Earth was nicknamed the waiting room. They called it the waiting room. And it was almost as if people would incarnate from that facility and onto Earth, and the Earth would be the waiting room. And I know this for a fact because I remember talking to somebody in the facility, but basically they were and used for a mission and then memory wiped and put back, and unbeknownst to them, right? And then they would just keep living about their life on Earth until they were needed for another mission, and they would be taken. And it seemed like where we were all in this facility that literally overlooked the planet, because there was this viewing gallery that had stadium seating, and there was a huge window that looked over Earth, and it was almost like you can just like it would just like sit in there for pastime as like just a viewing gallery, a place to look. And there was a lot more to it than that, but that that's like the only memory that I actually have that it was seemed to be off planet.
Oh, all right. So I'm gonna see if there's any, we do have a chat room, this is Rumble. So I wanted to see if there are any questions in the chat, but I guess not. At least at the moment, it doesn't look like. So people that are listening, that are watching, can you put your questions in the chat? So in terms of your sort of access at this time to information, do you feel that, because you're a podcaster, right?
Right.
So do you feel that you're getting special access or any special access? I know that you just said that you interviewed, I don't know if you're calling him James Casbolt or Michael Prince, which one?
James Caspel, yeah, actually, which that interview actually premieres in like an hour tonight. But
Oh, okay.
um,
Well,
yeah,
cool.
so
Then you can
it'll air.
announce it here if
Yeah,
people can watch it. Yeah. So in other
it,
words, just saying, because, it's, at least for me, the job I do is like a mission.
right,
I
of
feel like
course.
I'm doing a mission, and it's almost facilitated. I don't know if you feel that way about Journey to Truth.
Yeah, I do because James reached out to us, and I don't even know how that happened. And he'd
Oh,
been in prison for 10 years, and I've never even reached out to the man. I've always wanted to interview him. I've seen your old interviews with him, and he's the one who found us and said he was ready, wanted to do a show, and for some reason we're the first ones he came to. So um, that I don't know if that was arranged in some capacity, but that's the way it happened. And
well, I think that, yeah,
yeah,
see, I think there's a lot of that going on, a lot of sort of arranging of things, and how information comes out to the public, is very orchestrated, and
right,
how it doesn't come out to the public, that a lot of stuff.
right.
But okay, so I mean, in what's happening to you in your life and all of this stuff that's been revealed to you, and a lot of it you've even, done a fair amount of research, it does appear. So
Right.
do you feel, are you happy about that? Are you, how do you feel like, because you seem to have like a divergent timeline when you didn't know anything and then you suddenly were brought into all of this.
I'm happy about it in the sense that prior to all this happening, I didn't feel like I had much purpose in life.
Mhm.
And then once I learned about this stuff, everything started making sense, and I found something I was passionate about, obviously the truth and learning
Right.
these things. And once you find out what's going on, there's nothing else. Like is nothing else. Like this is what you do, in my opinion. That for at least that's the way I see it. And I
Uh-huh.
feel like you share the same viewpoint because it's just so in a way, yeah, it can seem a lot of stuff is absolutely traumatic and it's been hard and heartbreaking and it's not easy and sometimes you even wonder how you're still alive. But then also, it's like what drives you at the same time because all these things are happening that's proving to you that there's something more going on here. And that's what makes it so interesting for me interviewing all the people that we do because I'm experiencing all this stuff on the back end. So when I interview people, I don't have to interview them as a skeptic as much because I know it's happening to me too. So
Sure.
we can take it a little deeper. And I feel like, yeah, I could look at it as something bad and play the victim to it, but it's really what drives me to keep going. And it's like every time they try and stop me or remove our YouTube channel for the fourth time or whatever it is, it's anytime they try to stop us or stomp us out, I feel like it just lights a fire under my ass even more. And like I'm like, okay, now I'm really not gonna stop. So it just
Yeah.
keeps me going, really. And I'm not like trying to call in more of that because it's nice to get a break sometimes. But I would say that it's just a passion. At the end of the day, it's a passion. And I feel like I have purpose now as to where before this stuff happened, I didn't really know what I was doing in life.
Right. All right. So in terms of well, like in your life right now, you moved recently, right?
I'm in the pro I moved technically on Monday. So
Okay. So,
yeah.
and have you traveled outside the United States at all?
Australia and Belize, Central America. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And you had a weird experience in Belize.
And Egypt too, actually.
All right.
Yeah, I had weird experiences in all of the places. Down in Belize, I had inner Earth experiences and missing time. Our whole car experienced 2 hours of missing time, and there was a whole thing that I didn't put in the book because I just didn't want to make this book any longer. So I had to go into book two. But in Egypt, we happened to be staying at the Marriott in Cairo, not the one downtown Cairo, not the one by the pyramids. And
Mhm.
it's that old palace. I don't know if you've ever stayed there, um, but it was an old palace. But while we were there, it was Ramadan, and they were having these like elite meetings. This is what our guide told us. Like all the governmental elites were there, and these like world leaders were coming for these meetings, and they're like the Egyptian council was there, and like all this weird stuff was going on. And my friend who was with us is a remote viewer, and she just kept like seeing that there was a jump room in this hotel, like this weird jump room to Mars.
Um,
That's what she kept seeing. And she's like, it's on the third floor in the palace. Like it's on the third floor in the palace. So of course we wanted to go look and we go over to the palace and get on the elevator. And there's literally not a third floor. It goes one, two, four.
uh-huh.
It goes one, two, four. You couldn't even take the elevator to the third floor. So we're like, okay, what's this? So we try to like snoop around the building and this guy just comes out of nowhere. And like it was almost like they caught us on the cameras, right? And like he escorted us. This is the weirdest thing, I swear. Like he escorted us around and gave us like this fake bullshit tour. And then there was this area where there was these mirrors on each side of the hotel lobby, like a mirror on one side. He's like he made us like stand in between these mirrors and like take a picture. He's like, look, it's a portal, it's a time tunnel, and like he was like saying this weird stuff, and he's like, look, it's infinity, it goes on forever. And we had we had this like I don't know what happened, but on my phone we had all these pictures, and at that exact moment where I'm taking pictures of the in the mirror, there's like a bunch of pictures that are just black, and it's like weird timestamps on the pictures, like almost seemed like something might have even happened there. And
Right.
so it's like everywhere I travel, something happens. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like I find myself in these situations and but yeah, so leaving the country is definitely interesting. Been an interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure. Um, well, okay, so I guess I'm curious, what do you have a vision for your future based on what's happened to you so far?
Yeah, so obviously it's like a never-ending research project. I'm always looking for answers. We're in the process, actually, as soon as I move and we're diving, or I'm going pedal to the metal on this secret space program documentary, which it's actually going to come at it from more of an approach like that show you just had me watch, the shadow operations. Like, um, it's going to be, we're trying to bridge the gap and reach the skeptics with it. I'm not going to jump off the deep end right away, but it's definitely something that I feel like keeps getting stomped on and pushed to the wayside. And I just
Yeah.
want to keep it in the spotlight. So that's something that I really want to do like big time and like get it on Amazon and all that stuff. So that's like a big project we have coming up. And as far as like relocating to Sedona, I feel like is gonna, I hope in a sense help with my memories, like my recall. I feel like getting out of St. Louis, it's a big part of why I'm trying to leave is to see if I can tap into anything else and like make more sense of all this stuff and fill in a lot of these blanks because it's all just like these compartmentalized memory fragments and it
Hmm.
doesn't paint a full picture. And that's very clear when you read the book, but I'm just sharing what I got. And honestly, by writing it down, it felt like it cleared space. Like now I can more stuff can come in. So
Right.
it's yeah, I don't really have a necessarily like plan in motion, but I'm never gonna stop doing what I'm doing.
Hmm. Okay. So, like, okay, well, I don't have any, I guess, people in the chat here. Hold on a second. I'm going to try to get the right page. Okay. Yeah. So, I don't know. Somebody says this seems like it maybe comes out of nowhere, but thoughts on George Van Tassel?
Oh yeah, I think his testimony is fabulous. That old interview he did where he talked about the basically that UFO landing in his airport and giving him the equation for time travel, and he was just matter of factly saying that they've accomplished time travel in the 60s and that he was in communication with these ETs that looked human. I think that's one of the most solid testimonies out there. And I
Yeah.
feel like it was like disclosure already happened in a sense. Like he came out and told us what they were doing, and it's a rare interview. But then you go online and all these people are arguing whether or not the stuff is even real. I'm like, well, it's already happened. You just got to dig it out of the archives. Go to Project Camelot, go to Journey to Truth, go find these old
Right.
interviews. If you were to bring those back to life, I mean, it's all there. The picture's been painted. It's just,
Yeah. I definitely feel like disclosure already has happened.
right,
It's just that people are doing what, like you're saying, in essence, even Congress, they're just arguing about it, but that doesn't change the fact that it is. Um, okay, so I have a theory about what's actually going on in the world right now in terms of, this war with Iran and so on and so forth. We are so locked into this reality, or people are. I'm not. But and I don't think people understand what's really going on. And of course, the mainstream news is obscuring it because they like to make you think there's one timeline and everything follows,
right.
like an order, like little soldiers or something. But the reality is that this is actually an war that goes way back between these cultures. Israel, run by the Anunnaki, and Iran, run by another group of aliens, and I'm not sure what they call them.
Right.
And if you ever look at the temples, you can see that they're obviously shaped like UFOs. Duh.
Hmm.
So, I mean, you have to, people that aren't able to make these associations, really, I can't help them. They're just
Well, I
going to
just had
stay lost until one day, they have an incident like you did, like some emotional thing that happens in their life or whatever it is to wake them up, something that is a trigger point.
Yeah, yeah. I was having a conversation today with a friend about this Iran and Israel thing, and I was like, you know what's funny? I get online and I see both sides of this. Everyone's arguing, they're debating, it's all this controversy. Nobody knows what to believe. But what I don't see anything about is that I feel fundamentally that there's an extraterrestrial component to it that's really the reason behind all of it that no one's considering, right? Whenever they're making their standpoints and their arguments, I'm like, there's something, I'm like, people don't understand they don't have the full picture. We're missing so much of the equation here. And the real reason behind that, it's not even supposed to exist as far as the public is concerned, right? And it's an extraterrestrial, temporal, multi-dimensional war, planetary, interplanetary. I mean, it's been happening for eons now. And I think we're at this like precipice. And I think that whatever surface level narrative we get, that's all it is a surface level narrative. And like what's actually going on behind the scenes is anyone's guess. We can, put the pieces together, which you're very good at doing. That's why I love your articles. I mean, you're kind of covering it in a way that everyone else just seems to conveniently ignore.
Right.
And
Thank
and
you.
yeah, so I understand fully what you mean by that. Like there is something going on that we're just not
Right. I
taking into
mean, it's
consideration.
just so obvious though, that humans are not being clued in and that both sides, I mean, I have to say both the good guys and the bad guys will not tell the people what they're really doing. Like
Right.
I think, Trump is basically following orders from
Yeah.
someone
Right.
somewhere. And you can kind of see this because a lot of times some of their actions, they don't seem to be organic. They don't seem to fit the picture. They just come out of nowhere. And some of his statements come out of nowhere, and they're like non sequiturs, as they're called.
Right.
And so then you have to figure, well, where's the rest of the conversation? We're only hearing, the superficial one. So yeah, I think it's very unfair because people's emotions are also, you
Mhm.
know, sort of triggered and galvanized by everything. But there's no real dialogue to be had that has any amount of truth. They're lying about the weaponry. It's not over nukes. Okay. And I know
Right.
that for a fact. And,
Right.
I know this interview is not about that, but it is interesting to me that you came along and you sent me your book and you have gone through this awakening process, right? That
Well,
has
yeah.
clearly clued you in on so many levels and proves that we live in such an interdimensional, multidimensional reality.
Right.
And that these things that we think are happening, one after the other in a very organized fashion aren't like that at all. And a
Right.
lot of them, like we're saying, it is like a house of mirrors. And some of these things are coming back to the surface, that have been buried for many, many years. And then other things are being submerged.
Right.
It's I think, if I would like people to read your book. So I'm encouraging people to read your book
Well, thank
because
you.
I think it will help some people that are having awakening experience. Will definitely help them. Okay, because they can relate and so they've got their own unique things. But at the same time, what you're showing is how multidimensional your own reality is. And that's a testimony that people can apply to their own lives and start to see, well, if it's that way for you and me, individuals, then it's got to be that way for everyone, right?
Right.
And for all of the earth and for all the different cultures and all the games being played that they're doing, right? The
Right.
military games and all of this. It's just and even timing, like, everyone's going like, why now? Like, what's the point? And why are these things happening now? And they try to make, they play this numbers game like they know
Right.
how everything fits together, but actually that's a lie as well, because it's not like that. It's actually much, much, much deeper. It's much more complex, and they're not seeing the complexity, in my view. So
Yeah.
I think I want to say kudos to your book and to the fact that you were open enough to want to share with people really
Yeah.
a
Well,
lot of that.
Thank you for that. And you probably haven't made it that far in my book, but at the end of part two is a long, very long chapter called Timeline Wars. And
Uh-huh.
I break down what I think is happening on the planet. And
Okay.
it's much more than the surface level war. And I get into the temporal aspect of this war, right? And the
Yeah.
timeline wars. And honestly, I had Larry, the Mars recruitment guy, to thank for even putting me down that path in 2017. He introduced me to the concept of multiple timelines.
Right.
And back then he told me, oh, you can look, like he was like, look at a video game, how like he used the NHL sports game for an example. And he said, if you want to know what's going on the other timeline, look at the video game, the alternate cover. He's like, NHL, he goes, that's not just like they let people vote on the covers to let them think that they're voting on the cover. But he told me that they never know which timeline is going to be solidified. And so the cover that doesn't get voted in, that's the team that won the Stanley Cup on the other timeline, is what he told me. And it didn't make sense to me back then, but now that makes a little more sense to me. But either way, long story short, the whole point of that is he put me on that path thinking about, I always had in the back of my mind since 2017 that, okay, there's like another timeline playing out. And the more that I got down this path, obviously that became apparent to me. And he also told me about a time travel program, and basically that's how we were supposed to get to Mars was through a jump room. And he told me that
Sure.
some of the time travelers were disguised as homeless people here, and whatever, all this weird stuff. But I do get into the timeline wars in the book, and you might enjoy that chapter.
Okay.
Uh,
That's
uh,
great. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And, but I often feel like, I think we are all time travelers. I think that is really clear. And, but when you're looking at sort of what's out in the news and what's in the mainstream reality, so to speak, it looks like they, for me, they're living in the past. It always seems like I'm looking at what's around me and the way people talk, and they're talking now like the things are new, but to me, they're old and they've been
right.
around for a really long time. And I think because I interviewed so many whistleblowers who had been, jumping timelines and doing various things, that I myself ended up doing that. So now I can't even relate to conventional reality. What people come up with is just so
I,
stupid. It's like beyond stupid. So I can't even address it. It's
I
just like,
feel you. I feel you wholeheartedly because I feel the same way. You've been doing it way longer than us. We've been doing it for a little over 6 years now.
right.
But there was a lot of interviews and a lot of people and
Mhm.
a lot of the same people you've had on the show. And you come to this like conclusion. Maybe you don't even come to a conclusion, but you get to this point where, like you said, it's all old news at some point. And
Like we're talking, disclosure has
right.
happened. It's like, what are they doing it over again for? It's
Yeah.
such a silly exercise.
Well, that's one of the things that I noticed observing all this is whenever we have these UAP hearings and all this stuff happening in Congress, they're quite literally attempting to erase UFO
Yep.
history and
Yep.
start over. And they had the audacity in that one of the recent reports to actually put weather balloon back in it. I don't know if they did that as a joke, like a slap in the face, but they put it in the report. And I'm like, oh my God, the new people that are waking up and getting into this have no idea that all of this stuff has been exposed, disclosed, and some, you
Yeah.
know. And here we are starting over again. They're banking on people. We mind wipe ourselves every day by just getting distracted. We don't even understand. We forget half the stuff that we don't even remember what we ate 2 days ago half the time. So they just rely on us to forget this history
Yeah.
by,
But I do agree that, there's a lot of effort put into wiping the minds of the populace and making them think that what they're talking about now is new.
yes.
And it's a real illusion. I mean, when you even go back to Tesla's work, your mind is blown because it's so, not only is it where we are supposed to be now, but we haven't even gotten there yet. And in,
Right.
they can't even talk about it in intelligent ways and all of that. It's just, you know, SpaceX is retro. It's a retro technology based platform.
If there was ever a dog and pony show, like if it's SpaceX now, like the fact that they still are even entertaining the concept of a rocket to get to space.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's a
Uh,
total misdirect, and they,
Right.
you know, they're asking themselves whether there are other dimensions. I mean, it's just, in a certain sense, it's kind of like it's boring. You know,
Yeah.
it's also one of its sort of great sins, in my view. And then people who jump into it thinking that it's new, or thinking that it hasn't been talked about before zillions of times by zillions of scientists and so on and so forth. But anyway, I hope that this, you know, people like you, people that are awakening, more of them talking to each other, realizing that, you know, other people need to wake up to this stuff is out there. It's been out there. You know, we're beyond this. Let's continue. Let's move on.
Right.
And maybe that'll happen. Maybe it'll help
Well,
bring
and yeah, I
people.
agree, and that's why I bring parallel realities into the conversation because, like, let's start talking about this stuff as if it's real because it's real. It's not like this taboo thing anymore, and I have memories to prove it. So I'm putting it in a book, and other people, so many people, they're like read the reviews, like they're connecting with it, and they
Mhm.
have similar experiences. So it opens the door for that conversation to take it to a new level instead of just repeating the same old Roswell narrative over and over and you know. So
Yeah, for sure.
right.
Well, thanks a lot for being on my show. I hope that we can sort of reconvene at a certain point and you know, hear more from you. So keep in touch and let me know when you have something more you want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you
Even
so
if you
much.
have some weird experience, like, you
Right.
know, because you have good stories.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And if anyone is interested in basically 1 hour on Journey to Truth podcast on Rumble and YouTube, our James Casbolt interview is going to be premiering. So
Okay. And just out of curiosity, did he tell you to call him that rather than Michael Prince, or was that your choice?
he never even said anything about Michael Prince.
Oh, wow.
I just no, he mentioned it, I think, but he never asked us to call him that.
Okay.
Um, it was a very interesting interview.
All right.
I can tell that his mind is fractured for sure, and he had a tough time grabbing on to certain memories, and it was evidence of mind control and like what years of trauma will do to somebody. But um, it wasn't. We did get some good stuff out of him, but it was interesting, and people will see that when they watch.
Okay. Good to hear. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.